Hello. Okay, welcome back, everybody. I hope you know now who you will talking to at BMW reception for your first beer, or probably wine. We start our last panel of the day, last but not least, and it's about social entrepreneurship. And actually, that's something I know a little bit of over the last years, but I have a great podium to talk about that with Ryan from the BMW Foundation, Monica from Roots of Empathy, and Michael from Beyond Philanthropy. And I would like to draw a line from the last panel to the current panel. Sasha said that already before. I don't differentiate between social entrepreneur and business-driven entrepreneur, or however you put it. And Ryan, you have been working or running startups on both sides, or however you want to put it. You've done it all, and now you work for the BMW Foundation. How do you see that? What do you see a difference between running a sort of business-driven startup and a social startup?
I think Sasha put it perfectly. And if I look back, I guess from where I am now, I can look back and say that I was a social entrepreneur for the most part. But at the time, I never thought of it that way. And some of the organizations, some things I started were nonprofit, and others were for-profit. But I started a for-profit company in renewable energy that takes the equivalent of 14,000 cars off the road in a year and diverts 100,000 tons of organic waste. So we would call that social enterprise, but our backers were a private equity company that couldn't care less, and in fact was invested in coal mines and all kinds of stuff. So I mean, for me, I think I look at things as an entrepreneur as there's a problem that needs to be solved, there's an opportunity to do this, and you kind of find a way to do it, and it doesn't make a difference. I think, if I look at the website, I looked just out of curiosity at the website last week of Kleiner Perkins, one of the most successful venture capital companies in the world, and I look at their areas of focus. They're typically in IT, and we're with, backed some of the largest IT companies today. But the only other two areas that they look at now are crisis management in terms of the Hurricane Katrina type stuff, and clean tech. And this is, those are social businesses, but this is also the future. This is the reality that we're going to be facing going forward, that the biggest markets, the newest markets are going to be in what right now we're pigeonholing as social enterprise, and are actually, I mean, these are going to be the basis of our economy in the near future.
And you work now for the BMW Foundation, and BMW Foundation is supporting in Germany many social startups, social entrepreneurs. Why do you think they do it? Is it because what you just said, it's going to be the big new market? Is it just the philanthropic work of a foundation? Or what do you think is their genuine interest?
Well, although we carry the BMW name, we're very independent. These are the kinds of gifts that founders of car companies give one another. In 1970, this was basically a birthday gift from one family to the other, worth now 50 million euros. So we have the luxury of having both a name that kind of breaks through walls and gets us in to a lot of powerful people who are interested, who we can involve in affecting change. But we have the luxury of also setting our own vision and working in a purely philanthropic way without kind of worrying about what the corporate goals of BMW Group are.
Okay, we come back to that later. Monika, you just started to work with a social enterprise, and you founded in Germany Roots of Empathy, which is actually an original Canadian project. And I remember seeing it the first time at a conference of the BMW Foundation in 2006 or 2008 in Toronto. So what do you do, and what is your experience after 1 year managing the social enterprise here in Germany?
Okay, what do I do? I think that started a few years ago when I was at the point at the end of the line of some kind of a career which was quite traditional. I did different things. I was responsible for startups for first full-time schools in the southern part of Germany. I did a bigger education fundraising in New Mexico in the United States. So I had a lot of experiences, but I saw a big problem. Doing all this, I was very effective building up the system, but I couldn't solve the problem of what we were just talking about earlier. What is with these young people being creative, or do we stop them? I saw myself doing in my administration during nighttime and during the day to try to solve the problem, but I couldn't, and the team wasn't big enough to do that. I actually took a time out, did something different, went into hotel management to have some experiences, more experience in the business part, to take my time to think about, so how do I do this? I had no idea. Well, I connected to Talents for Goods, Ashoka, and it took us a while, and it was just the beginning of this year. I got a call, and they said, hey, well, we want to introduce you to Mary Gordon. And actually, her system was what I needed. Because I was there, I didn't know how to connect. So that was a gift to me. So what I did, I looked at it very carefully. I think we had, I don't know, 5 or 6 conferences during January to get to know each other. I'm very happy we have new techniques. I'm happy to see you here face by face, but Roots of Empathy really lives from being, you know, connected and have all the new digital systems. So I'm very glad we have that. So I was brave enough to let's say, found the GmbH, which is a charitable GmbH, with support of Mary, because Mary's the one who founded Roots of Empathy, sure. So, but I have the experience here in Germany and about the system and what do we need. So I see it the same way. Our environment is not just a natural environment, it's a social environment, and it goes together. So if I wouldn't have been convinced that I would take all the profit out of the system already existing, I wouldn't have done it. So I took the risk because I already had very good tools. She's connected. We have good research of 12 years. We do have a very, very high-quality education system, mentoring system. Everything is there. So it was just, it's about us now using it. We are very successful with the 2-year Bremen pilot project. We work very close to the senators and to the ministries of education. And we want to expand, sure, and I mean, our next goal is to come to Berlin and spread from the capital. So the situation is, I was also very lucky because we had the gift of a very good foundation, which again was connected to Beyond of Philanthropy. So I had all the system already. So now it's up to me and up to us to use it and to connect it the right way. So what would be the next step? Well, take responsibility and make clear, also in front of the government and businesses, what the value is. So how can we connect? That's what I understand what an ecosystem is. To connect these people now, I do have the foundation now, but who will be my next partners? So that is our next goal, to get connected very well, and also say, we talked a lot about, you know, the traditional business and what can social economy do to that. I mean, that is something we heard about rising and falling today. Well, how about another bottom line businesses have to think about? That would be interesting, I think.
Thank you.
I just want to add, so Roots of Empathy, I still remember when I first got to know it. It's one of the most successful social enterprises in Canada. It's in more than 3,000 schools, and it does something that appears to be very crazy to many people, because it takes young babies it takes actually babies and 3-month-old babies and their mothers into a classroom of 4th or 5th or 6th graders to teach them about empathy. And it's an evidence-based proven concept to help children to be more creative, to be more empathetic, and to be more connected within their own communities. So for myself, the key thing is really there are technological innovations that are amazing. There are environmental innovations that also come out of technology, but there are also we can do a lot of things also better in the social sphere. And we will see in the future more and more that people will also invest in these things. Right now, this is philanthropy. That's why our company has the name Beyond Philanthropy. But it also has the name of Beyond Philanthropy because we're more and more moving into a space where people actually do real-time investments in this sphere. And we have many good examples for also that. I just give you an example of another German company, Voice in Munich, which has developed an app software that helps people that are deaf. Is it deaf? Yeah. That are deaf that need a translator at universities, and they can use the app as as a translation device. And it saves the government tremendous amounts of money, because normally if you are a deaf university student, you have the right to have a translator. And now you can use an app, and you can actually, the additional advantages, you actually can have a translator when you are in university, and you are not, you do not have to rely on the translator and his time schedule. So that, for instance, is the woman who started this. She's a trained translator for deaf people, and by now she has a fast-growing company where so-called social venture funds are invested. And the interesting thing is that these are funds that they are looking for a profit, but they are also very clearly are looking for a social profit, and that's what they are also selling to their investors. And sometimes the profit just may be that you get your money back and you do not get an additional profit. So there's something going on and changing, and that I think that's also interesting. And key thing for me is Canada is one of the leading countries in that field, and so it's a very interesting connect also on this panel.
I just want to add something, especially this program is I think the German-Canadian aspect is very important, because, see, we have quite some changes here. We got an immigration country real fast. Canada has quite an experience with it, because for decades it was just the other way around. So they quite have some experiences also with classes and school classes, being intercultural, multicultural. We have a problem with that, to be honest. So how do we want to do it? This program really addresses the effective side of children, and it does it because it has such a good curriculum, and it has such a good way of research, and they renew it. So it is really effective, and it differs from all the programs where they just come into the classrooms and you have the effect just for a week or 2 weeks, and then it's gone. So this program makes it it's very special because of sustainability.
Coming back to you. Hello? Coming back to you, Michael. I mean, you're Canadian by heart, but we know a little bit since a little while, and and you really move a lot of ideas and people and projects between these two countries. And the ecosystem, what we talked about before, what would you say is the difference? And you can put it in a positive. We don't always have to talk about the negative aspects of our countries, but what would you say are the differences in the ecosystems between Canada and Germany when it comes to startups in general, but especially to social enterprise? Is it just a sort of different view of civil society and economic system, the migration society was mentioned just now. What would you say to it?
Well, first of all, like Amber, I went to UBC, so in Vancouver. So that must be one of the connections. So I actually, by the way, when it comes to Canada and Germany, I think that university connection is a pretty important one because there are a lot of exchanges around that that create these connections. In regards to the ecosystem, I would say, and I know very well the social investment side. One of the things that I find very interesting in Canada is how, to a certain extent, very courageously, in that case, also the government got involved and also civil society. Canada had a social finance investment commission. They're right now building up a social stock market with cleared social investments. So there are all kinds of stuff that is going on where we're still dreaming of in Germany, even so the G8 or the G20, the G8 mainly right now had a big process on social investing. But so that's a lot more dynamic in Canada than it is in Germany right now.
Yeah, I was just. Yeah, go ahead.
If I can add to that, in Canada, the social sector really became, social entrepreneurship really became strong as the government started cutting back social services. So I mean, it's coming from generally a negative thing, and that 30 years ago, 40 years ago, Canada was not the leader that it is now in social entrepreneurship or social innovation. I think in Germany we've got kind of a luxury problem of having a very strong social sector with 6 very large Wohlverband Organisationen, yeah, those ones, and I think I'm saying we probably now both from the Canadian and German side, so I should choose, but there's kind of the expectation and people are used to getting good services from the government here. So there's not the impetus for change that we've had to have in Canada, and to a much greater extent that you've seen in the US. I mean, that innovation is coming because there was kind of nothing there and the government's not involved in this, so that it's the perfect kind of setup for it. But here also, as in the Scandinavian countries, I read in the Financial Times today that in Scandinavian countries, inequality is increasing. There are challenges as the Scandinavian countries become countries of immigration, as is Germany as well. There are new social challenges that are occurring, and I think someone said this before, and my experience as an immigrant in Germany, although my experience overall in Germany has been spectacular in the last 4 years, I can feel that it's not a country that's used to immigration the way Canada is, and this is detrimental if we don't do something about this fast. It's detrimental to the economy and to social cohesion and to things like social equality.
I go to you. Two of you, and then this is open for all of you. Huh? Just raise your hand, and I'm going to be more attentive. But preparing for this conference, what I was really astonished, looking at the business sector, all these big companies, and we had some representatives here, having these huge facilities where they put money in and staff and ideas and so on to help startups in the long run to be probably more innovative themselves again. And in the social scene, and I don't know about Canada, but I definitely know that the German Wohlfahrtsverbände, the German charities, haven't put up a think tank or any kind of accelerator, incubator to sort of create new ideas where you have it looks a little parallel. Michael, you want to say something to that?
Well, the key thing is, well, and Ryan can also jump in on that one, like, we now also, especially in Berlin, we have a social hub. We actually have several hubs by now for social enterprises in Berlin. And the interesting thing is that more and more companies from the mainstream economy are getting involved with these hubs. One of the key drivers in that field is SAP. But there are also many other companies that are interested in that. We're actually seeing large corporations thinking about their own social investment funds, because they find this a very interesting example. One of the key drivers in that is Schneider Electric in France. who are using their investment fund to fight energy poverty. And I just wanted to point out, we're actually drinking water from a social enterprise. This is also, Viva Con Agua is also a social enterprise that uses the money that they earn with selling this water to improve water facilities in Africa. So it's all kinds there, and I don't know if it's social, it's purpose-driven. It is, the key thing is that it's just happening right now, is that especially, and you see that also with people in the tech startup scene in Berlin and so on, they are thinking about there is more than profit. And there is more than, it's about giving back, it's about creating opportunities, it's about also inclusion. And again, you have amazing examples. One last from my side, here in Berlin, Auticon, which uses people with autism as software testers, who are a lot more successful as software testers as any one of us, because of the deficit they have, that is actually a tremendous competency that they have to do something, and we see more and more stuff like that, and I think that's a very positive development. And in some of these things, actually, there's also money in it, and we will see that people invest tremendously.
You're both nodding. You both want to add something?
No, I would just agree that it's very important to really underline that it will be more than just taking the profit out of it. There must be another value. It will be, the other bottom line we have to look at.
But I see here that, I spend, I'm a startup guy by background, and so I'm drawn to the St. Oberholz Cafe and, the whole startup scene here anyway. And what I'm more and more seeing is that the line is really blurring, and you're seeing kind of what you'd consider traditional entrepreneurs. I'm aware of a cleaning service here that's working with new immigrants and is spending 25%, paying 25% of the time to train and give German lessons and this kind of thing. And then you see on the other side, social, traditional charitable organizations. We're doing support. I'm really pushing here kind of things like investment readiness and financial literacy for social organizations to realize that, it's not enough to just have heart-wrenching pictures and then hope that a foundation will continue to give you money every year. You've got to find a way, whether it's through user fees or, you've got to be a Dienstleister also. And I think the idea of sustainability is coming more to social, and of course there will be some social organizations that always depend on 100% grants, and that's okay as well, but it's pushing the ones who could actually get a sustainable model from this and saying, look, you've got to stand on your own 2 feet, and then organizations that, or traditional social entrepreneurs realizing that, if you can add this, if you look at the B Corporation movement that's happening a lot in the US, I know lots of people who are buying Warbly glasses and will only for the rest of their lives because it's a B Corporation and because there's a story behind it, So it's becoming important also from the consumer standpoint to see that this company is actually doing more than what it's required to by, the minimum legal requirements.
Yeah. Go ahead.
When I add one point, and because what may be interesting for many in the room here is look at the entrepreneurship pledge that actually comes out of Berlin, where people in the startup scene, in the traditional startup scene, have gotten together and are pledging that they say, okay, with this business, what we're doing, or with our next business that we will be doing, it definitely will be something that will solve a social problem or a societal problem in our society. So there's actually, it's getting more and more traction, and in the end, solving education problems, solving caring problems, but also solving environmental problems are the challenges that we will have in the future.
And if it
will also be our graduates. Looking at the young people, we were just talking about education at the universities, preparing them for entrepreneurships. They will look at their future businesses and where to work. Do they stand for something or not? That's also something we have to think about. You want to have quality people working with you.
In the panel before, we had a huge discussion about the role of the state and the role of the private investor. And if you talk about the social world, especially here in Germany, the state has a very important role. What would you wish public institutions to work better for social enterprises?
I would just add, actually, yes, the state has a strong role in Germany when it comes to the social sector, but it doesn't have a strong role when it comes to social enterprises. It's key driven. In that case, it's maybe very different because it's key driven by philanthropists, private investors, foundations, and the 2 or 3 social investment funds that we have right now in Germany. And the only player who really has taken, a government player who has taken a stand on this one is the EU with their new social innovation directorate. And that will be the key driver for what also is going to happen in Germany. The European Investment Fund is right now in the process of setting up a social investment group. They're so actually also institutional investors are starting to look into this field. But at least in Germany, it hasn't been the government who really has been a key driver here.
Sasha was on the panel before from the Bundesverband für Deutsche Startups. I'm not sure if he's still there, but I've been talking to them for the past 6 months, and I said, you've got 10 different coordinators for high tech and for the health industry and for all these different startup industries. Where's the social startup industry? And so they came back, and Mirko, the CEO, came back last week and said, okay, we voted and you can do this if you want to take it. So I said, yeah, all right, I'll do this. I think part of the challenge is that we're not being loud enough, and as the foundation sector, speaking for the foundation sector, we're really waiting for the government to ask our opinion. And I think what we need to do is go to the right people, go as high up as we can to the legislators, and talk to them about this and explain to them in a very simple way why this is important. So this is one of the things I'm going to be doing on behalf of them. And I mean, in 2 weeks, our chairman, who's a former ambassador to China, has arranged 5 minutes with Angela Merkel to talk about impact investing. And so we're trying to put kind of the bullet points and say, look, let's just get this on the plate, and get this on people's radar screens, and then we can build something with this. But it can't be just, the government isn't doing anything, and throw our hands up. We have to push this.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. From the practical point of view, I agree, because we're just at that status. We have everything. We had the foundation, we have the endorsement of the government and the ministries, but now it comes to the actual support. And it also, they sometimes say, well, we don't know, maybe we can't scale it. Yes, you can. We have very good research. That also shows if the project has quality or not. Can you scale it? Is there a way to measure? So we need their support. I mean, they're very important.
And can I just say, as you're looking for...
just walk to our next question.
Go ahead. That the programs are there. We don't need to build new programs. We can just take the tech startup programs, change the wording, change a few things, and use them and fund it from a different pot. But we don't have to reinvent the wheel for this. We just have to make kind of this matter as well.
Thank you. I'm just kneeling because I don't want to be our Toronto-based audience not seeing the podium. So here we go, next question.
Hi, I'm Gertor. I'm a lawyer working at Osborne Clarke. I've been in India last week, which was eye-opening in many respects. And in terms of government support, I learned a very innovative approach. India has recently introduced a new Companies Act, and they are requiring companies, the bigger ones, to spend at least 2% of their turnover on social projects with a wide range of freedom of choice. And it's a comply or explain approach. So you have to spend the 2%, and if you don't, you have to explain in your annual financial statement why you didn't do that. How does the podium like that approach?
The podium?
We will see how it will be enforced in India, but I know that I work for Mondelez and for some larger companies, international companies, and they all very anxiously have looked at this, and they were really nervous. I personally think it's a great way to incentivize the giving back. And on the other hand, we have to be, and in India there's this case, in the United States, and in also just decided as a law in the Netherlands. If you are a law firm, if you are an accountant, if you don't have a certain pro bono rate with which you give back to society, you cannot apply for public contracts. So we will see these kinds of changes happening. I always have to say, in this country, I like Ryan's optimism, but some things here are a little bit slower when it comes to that. But it will happen, and I personally am very encouraging about these kind of incentives.
Okay, looking to Toronto, anything you would like to ask or add?
I found this very eye-opening, both me and the folks here that have joined me this morning. I see more and more, to Ryan's point, in Canada we have a long history of social entrepreneurship, as you'd call it, people getting involved. This idea of not just volunteering for an organization, but actually coming up with contributions that go beyond, I guess, a traditional role. And a final comment that someone had made earlier about how the idea of entrepreneurship didn't really exist, and some people, the majority of people, I guess, students, would not be aware of it. I would say that even as recently as 10 years ago, I think that the mindset of a student was to come out of a university with a degree, to be a professional working at a traditional employer. And by traditional, I mean any office that would have an actual office location and a building, brick and mortar. We see in Canada a tremendous trend towards every school having an entrepreneurship chair, having a department. And I think a lot of young people aspire to be entrepreneurs, probably because of the model, the role models, I guess, that others have set up, but also I think it's the trend to be a little bit non-conformist, and as a result, you want to take over just to do something different. So I feel very encouraged here, and I hope that both Germany and Canada can learn from one another, because the systems may be a little bit slower in Germany, but I think that every system has pros and cons, and you can definitely learn. So I feel very, very optimistic overall.
Thank you. So, somebody else in the audience here. Yeah.
I'm just curious. I can see the benefits of social responsibility clearly for your own feeling, and I mean it's a good thing. I just wonder how it extends to internally to the company. You got people working for you. So how do you apply those principles to inside your company? Because this is where the conflicts might come,
I can answer that. Because we are both, we're a for-profit company and a non-profit company. And that was one of the core things that we always decided, that we on the one hand want to have a charitable side to help building the sector, connecting private donors and so on. And on the other hand, if there is a need to provide specific services. So actually our people work in both spheres. That's one of the things that was always really important to us. For us, for instance, it is also very important that every employee very regularly volunteers in food banks and stuff like that. And even so we're a small organization, one of the other things that has always been key to us is to be family friendly. And I tell you, if you're a company with 8, and I, for the longest time, was the only man, and we, in the last 5 years, got 5 babies. So that's another challenge. And the other thing that makes it, for us, like in our nonprofit, we also do a lot in the field of climate change, because we try to educate donors and also company managers about climate change, for instance, through expeditions to Greenland. So that's another way. In the end, it is, I think, as in every other company, it's about what is your Haltung, your attitude about these things, and how do you live that. It's about your corporate culture. And even in a small company, you can have a very strong corporate culture. I hope at least we do so.
You wanted to say something?
I would say, I mean, I think it is really a competition between players. So if you have, Unilever right now is doing some of the most interesting, has made one of the most interesting shifts in terms of environmental and kind of integrating its environmental and social practices. And if that means that they can, they have a 1% advantage over Procter & Gamble, and they can get, 10% more of an engaged workforce, and that's a huge economic benefit for them as well. And I think companies more and more are realizing that, and especially when you compare these big multinationals, that these 0.1% or 1% differences mean billions of dollars potentially. So we're seeing that more and more, and as a number of people have said, people who are graduating, I go to a lot of universities and talk there, and if I compare that to when I was doing that 10 years ago, where everyone wanted to be a banker or a consultant at business schools, more and more you're seeing a lot more people who this is, in the top 3 questions with salary and hours.
Just to add to that, the anecdotal evidence that I get back repeatedly from people that teach at Harvard, that they always say that the social entrepreneurship job fair is more popular than the consulting fair, the banking fair, and the startup fair is still fairly close, but it's really, so something seems to be changing, and we now could continue to talk about, does it have anything to do with Generation Y or millennials and so on, but something is changing.
So Vodafone should do the next survey on social enterprises and not about IT enterprises. Okay, any more questions from the audience? Any more questions from Toronto? If not so, Ryan and the BMW Foundation will be our host for tonight's reception. And Ryan told me if it's Friday and if you want to close the session a bit earlier, they're ready to go. And it's still a little walk.
There's wine and beer waiting for us, so.
So I would say thank you very much to the podium for being with us. Big applause. And I think I'm going to close now. I want to thank all of you spending time with us. And I have a little housekeeping. I just said we're going to go to the BMW Foundation for reception, and I can only recommend it. They have the most spectacular roof terrace looking onto the Bundestag if it's open. And I just want to explain you how to get there. You walk out of the embassy towards the Brandenburg Gate. And then, what you could not have done a little bit more than 25 years ago, you walk through it towards the east. You cross Pariser Platz, and at Wilhelmstraße you turn left, and you just walk along the river, and then you will find it. And whoever thinks that was now too complicated, there's Ryan you can follow, there's Michael you can follow, there's, and me, and Matthias and Christian. So just try to find a chap to guide you there. And that would be all from me. Thank you very much for the organizers. And I'm going to hand over now to Christina. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alex. I guess here's a big hand for you again. Thank you, Alex, for jumping in. And thank you all for coming, for your interest in the GCC 2014. We still have the get-together at the BMW Foundation, so more space for talks and for networking. I just wanted to thank our sponsors and partners, our contributors to the program, everybody who contributed. And I would like to thank our co-organizers, Michael Alberg-Seberich, whom you just met on the podium. And of course, Gerd Hoher, our third member of the board of Canada Meets Germany Alumni Forum. Thank you, Michael. Thank you, Gerd. We did have a lot of fun, I guess, but it was hard work as well. So I'm so glad it worked out. And from the topic point of view, I think we learned that there are a lot of commonalities, but also differences between the two countries. But just take that away and just keep networking, keep connecting between the two countries, and I think we can really start the startup surge. Thank you for participating, and see you at the BMW Foundation. And
Christina,
thank you, Kosten, for organizing the Toronto session.
Christina, what I meant to say is, in the interest of networking, if anyone is interested, I'm happy to stay behind and in front of the camera and address any other questions that otherwise you in Germany may have over a glass of wine or beer.
Thank you. And if not, talk to you in the coming days. Thank you.
All
Bye.
right.